Okay, we are on. First of all, congratulations on your Distinguished Civilian Service Medal from the Army for 50 years of Beetle Bailey. I understand the military wasn't always enamored of Beetle, though, were they?
No, as a matter of fact, one time they put out a book using my comic strips on how not to do things. And I was kicked out of the Stars and Stripes twice. Finally got back in, and a couple of other anecdotes. Somebody said they wanted some drawings to raise money for war bonds, and I offered to do some. They said they don't want me.
Oh my goodness.
Then there was another time I had lunch with Charlie Wilson, who was Secretary of the Army, and we came out of the office and we were shaking hands, and there was a photographer out there, an Associated Press photographer. He said, "Could I take your picture?" And Charlie said, okay. So we shook hands, they took the picture. I waited for a month or so to see the picture. Finally I called up and I said, "Where's that picture?" And they said, "Oh, well, the Associated photographer didn't have any film in his camera." I said, "Oh, yeah."
Sure he didn't. They always
sure he
didn't. Oh, that is funny. So that happened often back then.
So he squelched that one.
Oh, that was...
It was interesting, though. The the Secretary of the Army was pinning my medal on me, and I told him, I said, 1 month ago, I got a medal for the Chevalier from the French government. And I was at the embassy in New York City, and I said, as the ambassador pinned the medal on me, he kissed me on both cheeks. And the Secretary of the Army said, "This is the Army. We don't ask and we don't tell."
Now that brings up another question that a friend of mine, when he found out I was going to be talking to you, wanted me to bring up. That is, the Beatles never really shied away from the controversy, being pulled from the paper in the military for engendering disrespect or something like that. And then in the 60s, when you introduced Lieutenant Jack Flapp, and all the Southern papers pulled out because there was an African-American character. So he was wondering, is Beetle ever going to explore the current controversies of the don't ask, don't tell policies? Or is that too over the top?
Well, we did it a little bit by bringing in my character called Julius. And when I first introduced him, people started writing me and asking me, "What are you doing? Having a homosexual in your strip?" And I just, that's your opinion. So I've never really done much about it, but I keep him there. And that's as far as I think I want to go. I don't need any more controversy.
I understand.
Everybody now says they want edgy strips, and I was saying the other day, I said, "You want edgy? Look at what I've been through with the blacks and the Orientals and the feminists, everything. I've been in controversy ever since I started. I got a letter the other day, an email from somebody said, "What are you doing? You got retarded people in there. You got zero. You've got blacks. You got and it went all the way down the line. Fat people, bald people. You got violence. You got all this stuff. When are you ever gonna clean up your strip or get out of here?" It was really a mean email.
That's strange, because you'd think people would want as much representation of America as possible.
That's the reason I did it.
Yeah.
There's a reason I brought the black in there, because I thought there are blacks in the Army. There ought to be some there.
Absolutely. I hadn't even thought of the feminists, but until this afternoon when another friend said, "Hey, didn't Miss Buxley used to show more cleavage?" And he obviously needs to get more of a life, but I hadn't really thought about it.
Well, it's true. I used to draw two breasts on her, and now I just draw an outline, from one side.
Was that in response to negative publicity, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I just wasn't paying attention.
You knew something was missing, though.
Well, he obviously did. Now, back when Beetle, or I guess he was first known as Spider, he joined the military back in 1951, Korean War onset, and I picked that up from your bio on the King Features Syndicate page.
Right.
Since that time, we've gone through Vietnam, we've gone through Desert Storm, Kosovo, Bosnia, and through all of these conflicts, it doesn't seem like Camp Swampy has ever seen combat duty.
Well, I intentionally didn't ever want to get into combat because I think, first of all, it's not funny. Secondly, it gets controversial. The people that were against the Vietnam War, when there were a lot of them,
Yes.
thought that I was, attacking the Army. And the guys that were in the Army thought that I was representing, their experiences. So, fortunately, I was on both sides, and I survived. Because, in the past, all the old Army strips, like Sad Sack and Willie and Joe and everything like that, they faded right after the war. Nobody wanted them anymore. So, I've very carefully orchestrated how this can be palatable to both sides and survive.
That's exactly what I was going to ask next, was whether he had suffered any negative publicity during the Vietnam War because of the anti-war attitudes.
No, never had. I never got him into the war, first of all. It was always boot camp, which everybody experienced. And, I never took sides. And after all these years, I'm still eating.
You must be doing something right. I think my favorite Beatles strip, just personally, has to be back in 1992 to 93, and it's where General Halftrack is asked what he thinks of the new income tax becoming retroactive.
Oh,
and
boy.
his response.
I got in trouble with that one.
I was going to ask, did you get any pressure from the current administration, and have you ever had problems with the administration in power before because of a
No,
strip?
I never got any trouble with Clinton or anything like that. But boy, did I get angry letters from people saying, you're attacking Clinton. Just awful stuff.
Well, I'll tell you here, I'm living in Arkansas right now, and there's two kinds of people here. They either really love him or they really hate him. There is no middle ground. And
well, that's why I decided never to take sides in politics, because, you have 50% of the people against you, no matter what you do.
Absolutely.
So Gary Trudeau can do that, Arnold, Pfeiffer, people like that, they can do that if they want to. But I want to appeal to the broadest number of readers that I can, and if I can take a softer approach, I'll do it.
Now, how often do the editors ever kick a gag back to you to be redone? For example, I recall one strip where General Halftrack's written orders were to present guns for inspections. And it was mistyped and it said present buns for inspections, and no one wanted to correct him on it. So the original strip had the entire cast mooning the general,
right,
but the one that was published was not that one. How often do you ever run into those kind of things?
About once every 3 or 4 years. But, sometimes I can combat them. The editors, I had one recently where the general was, I forget what the gag was, but anyway, he was in the doctor's office, and I had him sitting naked on the gurney. And my editor, Jay Kennedy, called up and said, we can't use this. I said, why not? He said, well, first of all, the latest method of inspection in the doctor's office is that nobody is naked. I said, you're kidding. I just had a yearly checkup and I was naked. He said, really? I didn't think they did it anymore. I said, sure. I said, anyway, I'm not showing anything. He's just sitting there and he's talking to the doctor. And this is a normal way doctors inspect people. They're naked. So finally he let me do it, but I've had a number of things over the years where they've come back at me and said that you can't do this, and usually I go along with it.
Will we ever see any of those reprinted in some other format?
Yes, in Sweden. So, Sweden loves these dirty gags that I can't use over here. And every time I have a gag conference, I have 4 people writing with me. And they always come up with something that's unprintable.
Oh, sure.
And so we give them to our editor in Sweden, and not only only does he bring them out in books, in the comic books, but sometimes they appear on the front page of the newspaper. There was one where the general was playing golf, and the major says something to him like, well, looks like you're playing a lot more golf these days. He says, well, my wife and I finally decided that she can do what she wants to do, and I can do what I want to do. And the last panel, he comes home, and Lieutenant Flap is screwing her on the couch.
Oh, my gosh.
And he's saying, Martha.
Oh, boy.
She's smiling up at him like, well, I'm doing what I want to do.
That'll be...
And that was on the front page of the Copenhagen paper.
Oh, my gosh.
No, Stockholm paper.
We'll never see that in America.
No.
How much of Beetle draws from your own experiences in the Army? You spent, I forget, did you do a 4-year term, or?
Almost 4 years, not quite.
All right.
Well, of course, everything that I know and I write about, my research is, what I did. The other day at the Pentagon, they say, why are you still drawing Jeeps? You should be drawing Humvees. And I said, I don't know how to draw Humvees. That was my answer,
Yeah. Well, I just know that Sarge beats up on Beetle a lot, and I know that they've been cracking down on that, but I didn't know if that was more prevalent when you were in the Army, or if that's just a running gag you've got going where Beetle always gets beat up.
The enlisted men never beat up on, the sergeants and so forth, never beat up on enlisted men when I was in the Army. You weren't allowed to touch an enlisted man. You could bawl him out, you could yell at him and everything like that, you could punish him, but you could never hit him or touch him. So, what I'm drawing is just an exaggeration of Sarge's anger. But, people occasionally write me and say, you stop doing that, that's terrible. I said, well, if you believe this is real anger, if you believe what you read in the comic strips, then you believe that mice run around with little gold buttons on the red pants and drive cars, You can't believe this stuff.
Sure. One of the spin-offs out of Beetle was the High and Lois strip, Lois being Beetle's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did the Flagstons evolve from an appearance in Beetle to getting their own strip? There must have been a popular response to that.
Not really. I took Beetle home thinking that after the Korean War was over that I would have to take him out of the Army. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with him? So I took him home, introduced Lois and her husband High and the kids. I thought maybe I'll just have a conflict with his brother-in-law or something like that, just create another situation. And everybody started writing in and saying, hey, we like him in the Army, put him back. So I took him back, and so I'd sort of, minimally created High and Lois. And somebody asked me to write gags for another strip for another syndicate. And my editor, King Features, Sylvan Pike, said, well, if you want to write for a family strip for another syndicate, why don't you write one for us? So I said, well, I've already got an unemployed family here, High and Lois. So I just sat down, wrote a whole bunch of gags, and they said, that's great, let's look around for an artist. So that's how that all started.
Great. Now, you're directly involved with creating and overseeing several strips that come out of the Laugh Factory. You're still doing Beetle Bailey, and you're overseeing High and Lois. What other strips are you putting out for King Features?
Well, Sam and Silo is still going, but it's not going very well. I don't have anything to do with it anymore. I gave it to Jerry Dumas.
Okay.
And just, I think 2 weeks ago, Boner's Ark stopped. That's been going for 31 years.
Yeah. I was unaware that it had stopped on us.
Well, it just stopped. Probably hadn't stopped in the newspapers yet, but I got my last proof sheets, I think, about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
But I haven't done anything on that for a long time. I used to write and draw it, both of them. And we never got beyond about 130, 40 papers. It just wasn't worth my time anymore, so I turned it over to Frank Johnson.
I understand. Now, this is my last question. You began professionally producing cartoons at a tender age of 12, and or thereabouts. 11. I'll make that correction there. And I can't imagine that at that time you'd had a lot of schooling in the techniques of cartooning. Do you have any advice for budding young cartoonists today of similar age?
Well, the way I got my experience was just drawing for school newspapers, and I was drawing, you know, editorial cartoons and comic strips and everything like that, you know, as far back as I can remember. And you get them printed in your school newspaper, and you get the reaction from your friends and your fellow students. And you learn just by trying and experimenting. And anyway, you know, by the time I was, I think it was 14, I had my own comic strip in the Kansas City paper.
That is fantastic. That's incredible. All right, that's all I have. I'll shut off here.
The years and kind of obscure characters.
And I'm ready to go. Now, the only thing I've read on this so far was an article in the Palm Beach Post that was internet posted from last Tuesday.
Right.
And as of that time, they were saying that on Wednesday, SunTrust Bank was coming in to seize the artwork for Plain Crazy. Did they get it? And if they didn't, what arrangements that you can speak of did they come to?
I don't really know yet. The judge said he was delaying the decision.